Welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited to be here today as we come together in order to remember and advocate for and honor our brother Mumia Abu-Jamal. This his 67th birthday weekend. Of course, we know that Mumia Abu-Jamal's birthday is actually tomorrow, April the 24th. He was born in 1954. Today is April the 23rd. So we're going to be celebrating Mumia's birthday by advocating for Mumia, by advocating for the things that Mumia has fought for since he was a teenager, and even through all the decades that he has been unjustly incarcerated and stolen from the people and kept behind bars. We will be celebrating him by advocating for all political prisoners, for advocating with the understanding that all prisoners are political prisoners, for advocating for freedom fighters, for by remembering also those who have fallen victim to the violence of the state, and in particular also remembering our Philadelphia brother Walter Wallace, who was murdered just 6 months ago. And I want to just take a moment for some, I think, a positive moment of indulgence in order to just mention that today, the day before Mumia's birthday, is my birthday, but that's not really just the thing. In addition to that, I wanted to mention, we know that, or you may or may not know that Mumia's name means prince, and that the name Mumia means prince. And in addition, you may or may not know that my name means princess. So I feel very good and encouraged by that particular connection because I am very determined to see Mumia come home to the people. And these little things when I learn these things, they also, they say to me that is going to happen, that we are going to see Mumia home. I am going to have the opportunity to see victory in my efforts that are part of the collective efforts of people from all over the planet. And a lot of times people, when when we hear about Mumia, we listen and we learn about Mumia's history. We learn about how Mumia was radicalized at the age of 14 when he was beaten up by racists while going to fight against and advocate or to disrupt a racist campaign, and was beaten up by racists and also a police officer. And that helped him to begin to really realize how unjust the system is, the system that actually beat people up who were fighting against racism and oppression and stood up for racism and oppression. We hear about how Mumia became involved with the Black Panthers, helped to found the Philadelphia Black Panthers, was the lieutenant of information here in Philadelphia, traveled and worked with the Panthers in New York, traveled and worked with the Panthers in Oakland, and we also hear often people talk about the great and fabulous way that Mumia has been able to communicate with to the public and to all of us about the systems of injustice that we have been subject to, certainly for all of the lives, for the completion of the lives of anyone who is alive right now, but also for generations. And then we also we know that Mumia has been an amazing journalist and has a beautiful and powerful voice, which we get to hear on prison radio. And we understand that Mumia is this individual who brings great information to the people. And then we hear also in a separate way about the conviction of Mumia and the sentencing of Mumia to being sentenced to death, and then the fight for him to be removed from death row, and how he has been experiencing and suffering for all of these years of imprisonment. And they often talk about these two things as if they're disconnected. And the reality and the truth that we know is the reason that Mumia is in the situation that he is now, in the injustice system is because of his brilliance and his advocacy, and because of the impact that he has on the movement. And that impact is so significant. I can read a paragraph or two of Mumia's writings and my analysis automatically deepens. So when a person has that significant of an impact, they are extremely, extremely dangerous to the system. And that is why that is why they make such efforts and have such determination to keep Mumia away from us, along with other of our amazing political prisoners, but we will not have that. So today we are going to hear from so many of our comrades as we speak to the importance of Mumia in the movement. And we also honor Mumia for on his birthday, which will officially be tomorrow, but we have begun to celebrate it and acknowledge it today. We want to offer our prayers and energy to our good brother Mumia, who is recovering from heart surgery. He did have the surgery. He has been able to speak to his close loved ones, and we are so happy to hear of his recovery, and is just another testament to his strength. We have to continue to fight for Mumia. They are attempting to kill him in the prison through all forms of medical neglect. We will not have it. We will bring Mumia home. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's look forward now to the words of our many comrades over the course of the next 2 hours, as well as the performances of many who know and love Mumia across the planet.
And solidarity, love and solidarity to everyone on the call. As we know, people all over the world have been developing solidarity actions for Mumia over the last several decades. And they remain incredulous that he has had to spend the last 40 years of his life under conditions that no human being should have to live. And we see in the chat that there are people from Europe, from Africa, from South America, from the Caribbean, and from other parts of the world. We knew at the beginning of this pandemic that prisons were going to be responsible for the rapid spread of COVID-19, and we called for the release of prisoners, especially aging prisoners. And we know that imprisonment speeds up the aging process. This is one of so many reasons why we need to abolish prisons. I am one of the many around the world who have deep revolutionary love for Mumia. And we know that he needs us now. He needs us to stand with him as he confronts the brutal power of the state, and as he tries to grapple with his medical condition, which has been produced and we know exacerbated by prison authorities. As has been the case many times before during the course of Mumia's incarceration, his predicament mirrors that of so many other people behind bars. And we know that whenever we win a victory in the course of our struggle for Mumia's freedom, it is a victory for the larger community of women and men, cis and trans, who are in prisons all over the US. For too many years, as a direct consequence of the power and influence of police unions and associations, it has been really hard to build movements for Mumia's freedoms in the US that match the support developed in Europe, for example, because these police organizations have misrepresented him. They have demonized him. They have turned him into a figure deserving scorn and vilification. We all know that Mumia deserves love and support and solidarity. This is a moment when we are witnessing exactly how racism is produced and reproduced within the ranks of police forces across the country. And even though they know they're being closely watched, they simply cannot help engaging in activity that leads to more racism, more repression, more death. Because they are not as all-powerful as they used to be. This is precisely the moment to militantly intervene on Mumia's behalf. Racist violence has to stop. We can call too many names: Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and now Dante Wright. And we know that our collective sensibility to the way police forces and prison systems have devoured the lives of our communities, including leaders such as Leonard Peltier, and of course, our beloved brother, Mumia Abu-Jamal. This collective sensitivity has been produced in part by Mumia's always extremely insightful contributions. And as we heard from Pam and his wife, Wadia, Mumia is now in the hospital awaiting heart surgery and will possibly be chained and shackled during the surgery. This is absolutely humane. And now is the time to express our collective rage about his treatment and about the treatment of other aging prisoners. Mumia is about to undergo heart surgery. He should not be handcuffed and shackled to his bed. He should be allowed to freely communicate with his wife, Wadia, and with his longtime comrade and representative, Pam Africa. And so I join those who say, freedom now. We demand the immediate release of Mumia Abu-Jamal.
All right, so my name is Erica Keynes, and as noted, I am a member of the Black Alliance for Peace, and I'm also co-editor of the African revolutionary blog, Hood Communists. And I'm very honored to speak a bit about Mumia Abu-Jamal and his present influence on this movement era. Mumia once said that prison is a second-by-second assault on the soul, a day-to-day degradation of the self, an oppressive steel and brick umbrella that transforms seconds into hours and hours into days. In Mumia's case, the state of Pennsylvania is deeply invested in ensuring that there will be no more days for him. Instead of adhering to the long-time demands of the people to free Mumia, the state, including Philadelphia's popular progressive prosecutor, has refused to do so. Learning about Mumia's case as I've gotten more opportunities to publicly advocate on behalf of his freedom has especially opened my eyes to the delusions of any justice being found within the US injustice system. What has been made clear since the 3 decades fight to remove Mumia from death row was one, is that he is being punished for not dying, both then and now. However, despite these realities of the prison system and his unjust trial and sentencing, Mumia's invaluable voice and clear analysis of our material circumstances as Black people within the US could be heard on prison radio or read in one of his many books, like Have Black Lives Ever Mattered or Murder Incorporated, all produced from behind the prison walls, encouraging, informing, and inspiring countless youth marching and organizing in collective demand that our Black lives do in fact matter. Mumia does not simply serve as a point of inspiration. Mumia and all political prisoners who are aging away and dying, rest in peace to Chip Fitzgerald, behind prison walls serve as warnings to any of us who refuse to normalize this settler colonial state that depicts Blackness as innately criminal and Black people as deserving of injustice. So, brick by brick and wall by wall, we're going to free Mumia Abu-Jamal. May we all catch one another in the whirlwind. Thank you.
Peace. I'm very happy to send this quick birthday shout out to you, Mumia, the best and brightest example of emancipatory journalism, of comradely struggle, of putting to use writing and radio commentary in ways that continue to set a standard, again, for emancipatory journalism, for proof, as they say, that the pen is mightier than the sword. And that's why I love that quote in the latest edition of the book you've co-written with Stephen Vittoria, where it says something like the state would rather give you an Uzi than a microphone. No doubt that is still true to this day, because nobody has been mightier with the word or the pen than you. So much love, much camaraderie, solidarity, and tribute, as much as I could personally offer. And to those who continue to work in your support, salute to you all too. So like Fred Hampton used to say, because I know all of you continue to fight for peace, because I know you will continue to fight for it. So thanks everybody for all that work. Mumia, much love, very happy birthday, and many more. Can't wait to see you on the other side. Peace, everybody.
Mark, are you learning the root?
I am learning the. Yes, that is exactly right.
I asked the exact same question.
Really?
Same thing Robin asked. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful instrument.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Free Mumia and all political prisoners. I want to welcome everyone to this opening session for the people from Mumia Speak Out and Fundraiser. My name is Monica Moorehead. I'm a managing editor for Workers' World newspaper and a founding member of the Millions for Mumia worldwide campaign that began in 1999 to demand a new trial for Mumia to win his freedom. I'm proud to facilitate this distinguished opening panel, which includes Robin D.G. Kelley, a professor of history at UCLA and author of several books, including Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination, and the groundbreaking Hammer and Hoe. Susan Abulhawa, a Palestinian novelist, poet, and political activist. Her latest novel is Against the Loveless World. She is the founder of Playgrounds for Palestine, an organization dedicated to upholding Palestinian children's right to play. And Marc Lamont Hill, a well-respected academic, author, and activist. He is a professor of media studies and urban education at Temple University and is the founder and director of the People's Education Center in Philadelphia, as well as the owner of Bobby's Coffee and Books. Marc co-authored the book, The Classroom and the Cell, Conversations on Black Life in America with Mumia Abu-Jamal. I want to thank you all for being a part of this important discussion. Since we don't have a lot of time, I want to raise the first question to each one of you, and you can take 2 to 3, 4 minutes to answer. I want to start with a quote from the late great actor and activist Ossie Davis. He stated, "Every generation should have a moral assignment, and one of ours must be justice for Mumia Abu-Jamal," end quote. This statement was made around 1999 or 2000 due to the prosecutorial misconduct and bias during Mumia's first trial and subsequent post-conviction relief hearings. What is your interpretation of Davis's advice then? And how do his words still resonate today over 20 years ago? And I don't know who would like to go first in answering this question, or should I call on someone? Marc, you're unmuted. Do you want to start?
I would just say, I mean, first of all, I agree. It's a moral obligation to fight for Mumia. It's a moral obligation to fight for all political prisoners, to make sure that no one is languishing in cages and dungeons because of their politics, because of their affiliations, or because of their commitment to freedom and justice for our people. I think that there's a way that it can become easy to forget or to take for granted that Mumia is languishing in these prisons, and there's so many others, whether it's Russell Maroon Schultz, and we could go on down the list, Leonard Peltier, we could go on down the list, and they can become symbols. They can become sort of figures as opposed to actual people who are suffering and being detached from family and being detached from their lives. And because Mumia lives with us through his writing and through his extraordinary public witness, I think it can become even easier to not see that. But the moral obligation isn't to just support Mumia, it's not just to read Mumia, it's not just to critique Mumia, it's to, or engage Mumia, it's to actually fight to free him. We fought for a long time to get him off of death row. And for many people, that was enough. We had done the job, but the job wasn't to get him off of what Mumia calls fast death row, to allow him to live on slow death row, a life sentence for a crime for which he is legally, factually innocent and legally not guilty. So for me, the moral obligation is to Mumia, but it's also a bigger question about what we're willing to do, what we're willing to sacrifice, how much we're willing to commit to those who gave their very lives for us to be freer, for us to live more humane and just and livable lives. The political prisoners, particularly from the era that we're talking about, are people who literally made that commitment. And so for me, it's as much a fight for Mumia and other political prisoners as it is a referendum on where we are and where the Black radical tradition is at this moment and what our commitment to radical organizing and radical activism is.
Okay. Thank you, Marc. Susie?
I like this idea of generational moral assignments, but I'd like to suggest that they all fall under a kind of singular moral imperative to reimagine and reinvent social structures toward a reality where everyone gets to live with dignity, unmolested by those who are more powerful. Where humanity and non-human nations also can exist in the natural state of living beings, which is a natural state of freedom. This is actually one of the basic tenets of Islam, in fact, that the natural state of human beings and other living creatures is that to simply live free. I see Mumia's incarceration as an extension of the depravities of capitalism, colonialism, slavery, Jim Crow. His incarceration is not separate from US militarism, from wars waged by the US empire on Arab and Muslim nations or Asian, African nations. It's not separate from the multitude of laws and protocols throughout this country's history to ensure that Black and brown people live in a status of perpetual inferiority. Mumia was targeted. He was targeted by the FBI, by COINTELPRO, by Philadelphia police, Philadelphia city officials. Back then and now, I think he can't be a self-possessed Black man calling out the empire, making internationalist connections and broadcasting it to the masses without having a bullseye on his back. And ultimately, I think that's the only reason he's in prison, because Mumia is too free. He's a Black man who got free in his mind, and so they shackled his body. I see fighting for Mumia as a moral assignment for everyone, and especially everyone who chants and takes up Black Lives Matter slogans. Solidarity isn't yard signs and bumper stickers. It's about real labor, material as well as rhetorical labor, putting in the time and the money, if you got it, to affect real material change. Mumia is a man. He's a human being. He's a towering intellectual. He's a father. He's a friend, a brother, a husband, a grandfather, a comrade who's been fighting for social justice himself since he was a young teenager. And he's been locked up for 40 years based on coerced testimonies and blatant prosecutorial and judicial misconduct in a trial that, was so very clearly did not meet minimal standards of a fair trial. And he deserves our support. Despite the fact of his bondage, sorry, my dog. He's continued to speak out for the oppressed everywhere. He's been an outspoken and ardent supporter of Palestinian liberation in particular. And we owe him. We owe it to humanity. We owe it to every tenet of justice and morality to advocate and fight for his release. I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Susie. And Robin?
Okay, sure, yes. Everything's been said. And I can't agree more with both Marc and Susan's point. I would just simply add a couple of things. One, just to reiterate the point that, when Ossie Davis made the statement, he wasn't saying, our moral assignment is to get the courts to vacate the death penalty. His point was we need complete freedom for Mumia. And the fact is the task is not complete. So it is relevant today, precisely because we're still engaged in that struggle and to free all political prisoners. But I just want to point out one thing, and that is that while the Free Mumia campaign was fighting for his freedom, what was Mumia doing? He rarely wrote about his own case. He wrote, at the same time that Ossie Davis makes his case, he's writing about James Byrd. He's writing about the MOVE bombing. He's writing about the racist criminal justice system as a whole. He's writing about Dred Scott. He's writing about Taisha Miller and Amadou Diallo and Malice Green and Dante Dawson. He's writing about Timothy Thomas and the Cincinnati Rebellion. He's writing about slavery, indigenous, genocide of indigenous peoples, and he's writing about Palestine. So in some ways, he is the model of what it means, not just to be a radical journalist, but to be a movement person. So his injunction to us is that it's our moral assignment to basically end all forms of oppression and exploitation everywhere.
Yeah. And all three of you all have made such great points in reiterating why he's been known as the voice of the voiceless for so many decades. Because he's always advocating for the liberation of all humanity, especially people of oppressed people. I was able to visit him back in 1996 and for the first time. And the main thing he wanted to talk about was the prison industrial complex. I had never heard that term before until, we were able to visit Mumia and, talking about the role of the working class and, in struggle. I mean, he was just he's just such an amazing human being that he knows more about what's going on inside the United States than a lot of people who live in the United States, for various reasons. So anyway, I want to thank you all for that, those important lessons. And the second question that I wanted to ask you all, of course, we know what happened this past week, with the really an historic conviction of a white cop for murdering, that's Derek Chauvin, for murdering George Floyd. And there's an important connection that has to be made between the rebellions that took place following George Floyd's lynching that was caught on video camera, as we all know, with those rebellions and the impact that it had, on this conviction. But if you can talk about whether you agree that there is a connection between this historic conviction, what led up to the historic conviction, and the ongoing campaign to win Mumia's freedom. What are those connections that you see? And maybe we can start with Robin this time, and then.
Okay, great. It's a great question. For me, what's historic was the presence of 26 million people in the streets, and the prominence of the call for abolition that's, linking defunding and abolishing the police with abolishing prisons and jails. And that's one connection. And I think that we're all indebted to Mumia because he has been a key voice of radical clarity, influencing at least 3 generations of activists, through prison radio, through his writings. We all know his books. One of my favorites is, his conversations with Marc, Lamont Hill, Classroom in the Cell. But, we jump to even the later writings, Writings on the Wall and Have Black Lives Ever Mattered. Have Black Lives Ever Mattered came out 2017, brings together 2 decades of writing that reveal kind of consistent, incisive analysis of racialized state violence. And recall that at the end of his dedication, he wrote, "Spring is coming." He said that. And so on the one hand, he gives us the analysis, the encouragement. He predicted this moment, but I fear that the connection hasn't actually been mutual. And what I mean by that, and Marc kind of hinted at this, and our movements, I think, haven't been as robust at calling out political prisoners. Both Mumia, Sundiata Colley, Jamil Amin, Mutulu Shakur. We can go on. We lost Romaine Chip Fitzgerald just a couple of weeks ago. But movements claiming to fight for Black lives, have said or done not a lot in terms of demanding the immediate release of our political prisoners. The Philadelphia chapter of BLM is an exception, an amazing exception, actually. But freeing Mumia and all political prisoners should be a paramount demand. It shouldn't be secondary. They're the frontline victims of the fascist state. They're denied basic rights and legal protections under international law. They're denied adequate health care, forced living conditions with no protections for COVID. This is where we are right now. So we have to make it paramount. We need to make the connection even deeper.
Okay, Susie, and then we'll end with Marc.
So this question actually reminded me of a letter that I recently got from a friend, Henry Hentz, who's been locked up for 42 years and counting for a crime he definitely did not commit. And he wasn't at all impressed with the verdict of the Chauvin trial. I just want to read you a little bit from his letter. It said, "On the one hand, a guy chokes a man for 9 minutes in front of at least 12 witnesses, and it is videotaped. The witnesses are yelling at the guy to stop. The victim is pleading for his life. And at a trial, 4 or 5 experts testified that he caused the death. The victim was dead after 4 or 5 minutes. The extra choking time, just meanness, making sure he was dead. EMS had to pull him off." And what did he get? He was only charged with 2nd and 3rd degree murder. He'll only get 15 to 40 or so. And on the other hand, Henry's serving life. And the only evidence against him were the coerced testimonies of 2 individuals who plea bargained their way out of charges and got sentence reductions in return for false testimony, which they later recanted, which is very similar to what happened to Mumia. But I look at look what had to happen just to get this minimal bit of justice from a plain as day murdering cop. Millions of people had to mobilize over several years. A lot of them were killed. Some were harassed relentlessly. Some were stalked until they locked them up too. And look at all the cops with blood on their hands still walking free. Breonna Taylor's killer faced no real consequence, nor did Tamir Rice's killer, nor did Philando Castile's killer, and on and on. So yes, the Chauvin case is a victory, but it's in many ways it's a bone that got thrown our way. I think there are real structural changes that have to happen, and no matter what, we have to find a way to get Mumia out. But so I think it's important to to not get lost in the celebration. So many of us are accustomed, and this is certainly true for Palestinians, we're accustomed to losing all the time, and the slightest little affirmation of our humanity, of the value of our life, just has us, over the moon. And when in reality, it's just crumbs. And in some ways, I think this is just crumbs. I mean, there are real structural disparities and injustices that and among them is Mumia's incarceration that have to be remedied.
Thank you, Susan. Marc, you're muted.
Sorry. I agree. I think they're crumbs, and they're crumbs that actually lead us kind of on a trail away from where we actually want and need to be in certain ways. I was thinking about, thinking about what I was saying earlier about, there was a moment when, I guess about a decade ago now, when we fought, and after decades of fighting, Mumia was taken off of death row. There's a way that can be seen as a victory, but if we stop there, then we've actually not won the fight. We've not won the battle, because Mumia is being caged and he shouldn't be. And so it's a partial victory. It's a bone that's being thrown to us, as Susie said. But how we respond to that can shape where we go forward, and also it can be an index of what our politics really are. And so when I think about what happened this week with the Chauvin trial, there's something to be said about the power of the people. There's something to be said about people taking to the streets, as Robin said, people organizing to get an outcome. But we have to seriously unpack what that outcome is. As an abolitionist, I don't look to the criminal legal system or the criminal punishment system for justice. And at the moral, ethical, political, or philosophical level, I wouldn't call what happened this week justice, right? We haven't been able to restore what was taken. We can't, right? And even accountability, it's a kind of short-term provisional accountability that says we can hold Chauvin accountable. We haven't held those 3 officers accountable yet. But more importantly, we haven't held accountable a system that allows such theaters of violence, of spectacular violence, to exist in the first place. And so this isn't even accountability. So if we embrace the language of accountability and justice at this moment, similar to if we embrace the language of justice when we say Mumia is off death row, we sell ourselves short. We sell out those who we're fighting for, but we lose sight of a deeper and grander vision. And that is one where justice doesn't mean punishment, and punishment doesn't mean confinement. That's the world where we want to get to. And so for me, in many ways, the fight to get Mumia out, and some people look at our demands when Mumia is in the hospital, and we say, look, the freedom is the only treatment. That may seem like an extravagant or absurd demand, but it's no more absurd than in the Attica rebellion, right? Calling for a complete release. It's no more absurd. Each time we make these demands, it's both for a strategic and tactical reason, but it's also to articulate a kind of moral clarity and political clarity. And so as we demand Mumia's freedom, that's an index of our political clarity. And as we say, Chauvin being in a cage is it makes us feel good. But that's the same kind of revenge and bloodlust that animates a belief in, or sustains a belief in the criminal punishment system in the first place. I'm not telling the family of George Floyd to not be happy that they got something. I'm not saying that. I'm not telling the people who fought and struggled for this to feel like they failed. That's not what I'm saying. I think sometimes we can be so lefter than now that we lose the people. What I am saying is at this moment, we have an opportunity to leverage this moment to articulate even more ambitious, audacious, to use Robin's language, freedom dreams. And if we can do that at this juncture in history, I think then we get somewhere, and Mumia is right at the center of that.
Great. Okay, well, we're just about at the end of this part of the evening's, I don't want to say festivities, but all the different other Zoom calls that take place. Do any of y'all want to take 30 seconds just to make any final remarks before we end in about 2 minutes, or
Brick by brick.
wall by wall?
Wall by wall. That's right.
We're going to free
Mumia
Abu-Jamal.
Mhm.
All right, that's a great way to end. Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue to struggle. Tomorrow, big demonstration in Philadelphia at 2 p.m. Hope people can come out and stay in the streets to free Mumia and to abolish incarceration, to free all political prisoners, and abolish capitalism, the root of all of these evils. Thank you.
Thanks,
turn it back over.
Monica.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll turn it back over to Sunny.
So I was on my way to lunch, on my way to IHOP, and I had to pass DA Larry Krasner's office. I saw him doing like a press conference. That was the day that Derek Chauvin's trial was starting. And I remember walking directly past him and looking, I was like, is that the DA? Is that Larry Krasner? Then I stopped and I turned around. And when you approach, especially like these public officials in Pennsylvania, you have to think twice, right? Like is it worth the possible harassment, so I felt like it was, and I turned around, and he was actually breaking away from the news reporter, and I said, DA Larry Krasner. And he said, yeah. He was like, hey man, what's going on? Because I'm pretty sure they were like, heralding him as like, some progressive hero, like on the news or whatever. And I told him I was the grandson of Mumia Abu-Jamal. My name is Jamal Jr. And we began. I said, like, I would like to, bring up some points to you, and like he almost immediately kind of went into like his I guess like his coached like quotes. I can't get your grandfather out of jail. I just don't have the power to do so. Which like we understand that, but what we want is for Larry Krasner to not like uphold decades of injustices to Mumia's trial that we all know about, right? Especially with boxes being found in like old DA heads, everything that we found out about Judge Sabo and one that he upheld, and we just want justice, right? And for somebody to be heralded as the person that's going to help bring justice to Pennsylvania or Philadelphia. I wanted to kind of like put a face to like the people that like he's kind of like ruling against. So we then he then had something to say. He was like, I'm just trying to be fair. I got to be fair to everybody. And the quote was, Mumia hasn't had a fair trial since he had a trial, right? And like right now, if we're going to have another court proceeding, we want it to be as fair as it can be, right? We want to admit evidence that, especially with the luxury of time and technology, evidence that like we can use in court, right? Not the same evidence that they were using in court with, purchased like witnesses and just a railroad trial system. So they talk about Mumia like he's like the pastime, or like a criminal justice system that we're trying to reform so a Mumia can never like happen again. But Mumia is still alive. Mumia can still be home, right? And we all like took to the streets and we marched, and we screamed for the criminal justice system to be like kind of changed. But we can't forget the people that are still there. The Black liberation movement, like the people that were speaking and that were out before it was like like a cool or a fad, right? Like I think Mumia's case is deeply entrenched in what we're trying to fight for as a nation right now, especially because he's one of the surviving members of that Black liberation movement. And Larry Krasner can't play both sides, man. Like you're gonna have to pick a side. It's either, are you going to be the person that everybody, elected you to be, right? Or are you going to run this middle line and kind of like, cheat us out of our vote?
When I was invited to speak on behalf of Mumia, one of the first things that came to mind was how long he's been in prison. How many years of his life have been stolen away from him, his community, and his loved ones. He has been incarcerated for 38 years. Mumia has been in prison longer than I have been alive. When I first spoke with Mumia on the phone, I did very little talking. I just listened. Hearing him speak was a reminder of why we must continue to fight. Earlier this year, the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner issued a statement noting that prolonged solitary confinement, the precise type often used in the United States, amounts to psychological torture. Mumia Abu-Jamal has spent roughly 30 out of his 38 years in solitary confinement. In his book, Live from Death Row, Mumia wrote that prison is a second-by-second assault on the soul, a day-to-day degradation of the self, an oppressive steel and brick umbrella that transforms seconds into hours and hours into days. He has had to endure this second-by-second assault on his soul for 38 years. He had no record before he was arrested and framed for the death of a Philadelphia police officer. Since 1981, Mumia has maintained his innocence. His story has not changed. Mumia was shot, brutalized, arrested, and chained to a hospital bed. The first police officer assigned to him wrote in a report that the Negro male made no comment, as cited in Philly Mag. Yet 64 days into the investigation, another officer testified that Mumia had confessed to the killing. Mumia's story has not changed. But we are talking about the same Philadelphia Police Department whose behavior shocks the conscious, according to a 1979 DOJ report. Behaviors like shooting nonviolent suspects, abusing handcuffed prisoners, and tampering with evidence. It should therefore come as little surprise that according to Dr. Johanna Fernandez, over 1/3 of the 35 officers involved in Mumia's case were subsequently convicted of rank corruption, extortion, and tampering with evidence to obtain convictions in unrelated cases. This is the same Philadelphia Police Department where officers ran racial profiling sweeps, like Operation Cold Turkey in March 1985, targeting Black and brown folks, and bombed the Move House in May of that year, killing 11 people, including 5 children, and destroying 61 homes. The same Philadelphia Police Department whose officers 8 days before the 2020 presidential election shot Walter Wallace Jr. dead in the streets in front of his crying mother. The Philadelphia Fraternal Order of Police has unrelentingly campaigned for Mumia's execution. During their August 1999 national meeting, a spokesperson for the organization stated that they will not rest until Abu-Jamal burns in hell. The former Philadelphia president of the Fraternal Order of Police, Richard Costello, went as far as to say that if you disagree with their views of Mumia, you can join him in the electric chair and that they will make it an electric couch. The trial judge on Mumia's case in 1981, Albert Sabo, was a former member of the Fraternal Order of Police. Court reporter Terry Moorer Carter overheard Judge Sabo telling a colleague, "I'm going to help them fry the nigger." Found in December 2018 in an inaccessible storage room of the DA's office, 6 boxes of documents from Mumia's case reveal previously undisclosed and highly significant evidence showing that Mumia's trial was tainted by a failure to disclose material evidence in violation of the United States and Pennsylvania constitutions. In November 2019, the Fraternal Order of Police filed a King's Bench petition asking the court to allow the state attorney general, not the Philadelphia DA's office, to handle the upcoming appeals. As the FOP president John McNesby said, just last year, Mumia should remain in prison for the rest of his life. And a King's Bench order provides the legal angle for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to uphold Judge Sabo's original wish, which was for Mumia ultimately to die in prison. Today we are living through a moment where it's acceptable to paint "End Racism Now" in front of the Philadelphia Police Department's 26th District headquarters. And yet a political prisoner who has since the age of 14 dedicated his life to fighting against racism continues to be caged and lives his life on a slow death row. We're in the midst of a movement that says Black Lives Matter. And if that's truly the case, then it means that Mumia's life and legacy must matter. And the causes that he sacrifices life and freedom for must matter as well. Through all of the torture Mumia has suffered over the past 38 years, his principles have never wavered. These principles have manifested themselves in his writing countless books while incarcerated, in his successful radio show, in the time and energy he has poured into his mentorship of younger incarcerated folks, and the continued concern with the people suffering outside of the walls. Even while living in the hells of the prison system, Mumia still fights for our human rights. We must continue to fight for him and his human rights. Mumia is 66 years old. He is a grandfather. He is an elder with ailments. He is a human being that deserves to be free. Free Mumia.
My fellow dissident Americans, for those of you who don't know me, I am Jello Biafra from the old punk rock band Dead Kennedys, Alternative Tentacles Records, all kinds of speaking, activism, newer band Guantanamo School of Medicine, and more. And I also have had very strong opinions about racial equality and no police violence, freaked out by lawless police riots from when I was a small child growing up in the 60s, and I especially had a problem with the death penalty. What if they've got the wrong person? That could happen to me. It could happen to anybody watching this, especially if they're already on the radar screen for saying things and doing things that our charming government and the authorities don't happen to like. So when I found out about what was happening to Mumia Abu-Jamal, I was furious. It reminded me of what they did to Panther leader Geronimo Pratt in California, and the Angola 3 in Louisiana, and so many more who should never have been in prison in the first place. West Memphis 3, another example. And now that the West Memphis 3 have finally been freed 3 years after DNA tests proved they were innocent and the authorities finally had to admit they were wrong, well, what happens to Mumia now? He is probably the best known American political prisoner in the world and has been for some time. I got this shirt in Germany or France, I can't remember which, when it was handed to me. Several times there has been really close calls between Mumia even being executed. I remember when people were dragging couches and furniture into the middle of Valencia Street in the Mission District in San Francisco, getting ready to set them on fire and get a riot going, even though he was at least 48 hours away. And how must have he felt in a case like that? We all have to admire his courage, just like with Nelson Mandela and anybody else who's been put in this horrible, horrible position. But unlike Mandela, he's still there. And now we are really hanging on the brink because there's congestive heart failure, there's COVID and other illnesses, and nobody knows yet what has happened with this supposed heart surgery, let alone if he's being shackled, spread-eagled on his back to a bed, which may well make his condition worse. And others will cry, oh, who cares? Cop killer, cop killer. Says who? Fine, he was convicted. I didn't witness the thing. I can't be 100% sure he did not commit the crime. But what our Constitution says is a jury must find a defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And there is so much reasonable doubt in this case that if he were anybody except a kick-ass journalist, head of the Philadelphia Black Journalists Association, broadcaster, now author of books and much more, they would have let him go, 30, 40 years ago. Governor Wolf, this is getting ridiculous. Supposed progressive DA Mr. Krasner, where are you? And for that matter, where is the Philadelphia Police Officers Union trying to find the person who really did kill Officer Faulkner? That person is still out there, and they don't bother to pick him up. What is going on here? What we don't want is what happened with the Angola 3 in Louisiana. 3 Panthers who spent decades in solitary, and finally they let Herman Wallace out 3 days before he died of cancer. He was barely even conscious. This is not what should happen to Mumia Abu-Jamal or anybody else. What are they afraid of at this point? He might run for office in Philadelphia? This is such a direct parallel to Navalny in Russia, where they won't let his own doctors see him, all kinds of words getting out that his health is falling apart, and maybe that's what Putin wants, but it's not what anybody else wants. We honored Mumia years ago with this album and then 2 more, and when I had the candidacy for president dropped in my lap by other members of the Green Party, I nominated him for my vice president to call more attention to his case. Now is the time to refocus that attention and put more pressure than ever on Governor Tom Wolf, DA Larry Krasner, and others saying, for crying out loud, let the man go.
The powerful God in office, cause he refused to be they servant, these spit truth that burn like black churches, codes and verses, a million pouring hearses, watch decision of Dred Scott as it reverses, long as the rope was tied around Mumia's neck, let there be no rich white life without no respect, cause and effect, can't you smell the smoke in the breeze, my panther, my brother, we are at war until you're free.
I'm Tom Morello. It's a shout out to Mumia Abu-Jamal. Wishing you well, brother. And in solidarity, we are with you in the insistence that you get a new and fair trial. And to that end, got this song for you right here. Let Freedom Ring. Take care. This is Let Freedom Ring. There's a man, homeless and hungry. There's a wind, it's hard and biting. There's a song in need of singing. There's a fuse in need of lighting.
it's no secret the day is coming, and it's a day I hope to see. But if they ask you, brother, who told you that, you didn't hear it from me. Let freedom ring, let freedom ring, let freedom ring, let freedom ring. There's a book with 7 seals. There's a beast with 7 heads, 7 angels on 7 horses, 7 vials with 7 plagues. So if you're here a knocking on that door, just let it be. But if they ask you, brother, who told you that, you didn't hear it from me. Let freedom ring, let freedom ring, let freedom ring, let freedom ring. Where the righteous stood, and where the righteous fell, there's a voice, it's soft and whispering, it's coming from the bottom of the well. And I tried hard to remember what that voice said, over and over, over and over. I repeated those words inside my head. Let freedom ring, 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 let freedom ring. And if they ask you, brother, who told you that, tell them it was me.
Abu-Jamal, secuestrado por el Estado policial criminal. Es el sistema penal, un negocio legal. Falsa y farsa la justicia neoliberal. No hay paz ni puta democracia sin justicia social. Presas, presos políticos, libertad. Salgan a la calle, que salgan a gritar. Que salgan a la calle ya.
La fuerza de la palabra negra, congruencia, libertad.
Mumia Abu-Jamal significa para mí lucha, fortaleza y un contundente mensaje al poder de que hagan lo que hagan, no nos van a hacer flaquear. Mumia Abu-Jamal significa para mí fortaleza y valor a pesar de vivir en las condiciones de cárcel, y también significa periodismo crítico desde abajo.
Mumia para mí significa resistencia, dignidad, solidaridad, congruencia y amor. Libertad para Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Mumia representa para mí la tenacidad de un espíritu rebelde que aún en las condiciones más adversas no deja de luchar.
Está de seguir luchando.
Mumia Abu-Jamal is life, freedom, love and resistance.
Pantera negra rebelde, fuego, justicia y libertad.
Encarcelaron, lastimaron y envenenaron su cuerpo, pero su espíritu se mantiene ileso.
Sí, pues Mumia Abu-Jamal representa la congruencia revolucionaria, el cariño comunitario, el periodismo combativo, la lucha anticapitalista y la resistencia antiimperialista, pero sobre todo un gran ejemplo de vida.
Libertad para Mumia.
Mi hermano Mumia Abu-Jamal, para mí, es esperanza.
Resistencia, fuerza, paciencia y humano calor. Memoria incansable, voz valiente, amor.
Mumia Abu-Jamal lleva tantos años en la cárcel como yo de vida. Por eso, para mí, él significa libertad, porque a pesar de todo, nunca ha dejado de ser libre. ¡Viva Mumia Abu-Jamal!
Dignidad.
Mumia significa para mí no dejarte vencer ante nada y ante nadie, simplemente una inspiración.
Día y resistencia de los pueblos originarios y afros.
From Puerto Rico, we send the warmest embrace full of solidarity to Mumia, to PAM Africa, who is the voice of the voiceless, to the MOVE family, and to all the organizers and participants of this important event. We join the thousands of voices around the world who demand not only a new trial, but the immediate freedom for Mumia, because the people, not the state's court, the people have tried the case and found him innocent. With facts gathered throughout the years, with proof, we have seen, particularly over the last few years, how rotten, how racist, and how unlawful this system is when it deals with people of color and even with poor whites. Can we trust it? Of course not. So, as we rightfully demand a new trial, we should not have any illusions of its fairness. We must free Mumia because he is innocent, but we must also free Mumia because we need his contribution outside the prison's wall. We need his knowledge. We need his understanding. We need his wise commentaries to feed the movement for liberation. Mumia might be isolated in prison, but is more aware of the current situation and events than many people outside. Mumia is a revolucionario that must be among us to forward the struggle. So from Puerto Rico, we say, liberen a Mumia, liberen a Leonard Peltier, liberen a Ana Belén Montes y todos los prisioneros políticos. Venceremos.
I'm Sharon Cabusao Silva, a member of Kapatid, the organization of families of political prisoners here in the Philippines. I'm also a longtime member of Gabriela Women's Alliance. I wish to extend our fraternal greetings to comrade and brother Mumia Abu-Jamal. I also wish to extend the greetings to all the activists and human rights advocates who have gathered today and are speaking out and speaking up in this most difficult time of the COVID pandemic for calling for the release of political prisoners in the Philippines, in the US, and in many other countries of the world.
We want to express solidarity from Paris, France. In the spirit of international solidarity and the spirit of resistance, free Mumia, free Lamont and free all political prisoners.
À savoir quel lien nous faisons entre réparation et libération de Mumia, eh bien pour nous la réparation c'est ça.
Abu-Jamal! Todesstrafe überall! Freiheit für Mumia! Abu-Jamal!
We're Aztlan Underground. We've been supporters of Mumia Abu-Jamal since the early 90s, and we're here in solidarity, and we're sending prayers for a speedy recovery.
And
we would also, like to, thank you for all your work and your example and all the counter settler colonialism analysis that you've given the community. We've been in the trenches, alongside, you and all those who are trying to deconstruct the paramilitary settler colonial force known as the police forces, right? So we're here with you, and we send our prayers of peace and strength and health and healing, and may they review your case and that you're free, that Mumia Abu-Jamal is free.
Yes, free Mumia Abu-Jamal. We always say free all political prisoners, and we were there with prayer with you, Mumia. Thank you for all the hard, groundbreaking work that you've done with your writing and your analysis of within prison radio as well, and commentaries that really keeps us in strong spirit with you and solidarity with all political prisoners. So, let's free ourselves from these mental bounds and of colonial power and settler colonialism and biocolonialism as well.
Stand in solidarity with you, Mumia. Prayers up and tobacco down. Free Mumia, Aho, Natako Yo Yasin.
Pretty much said it all, man. Thank you for all you do, Mumia. We're just with you, and we're just standing in solidarity with you. We love you for everything you've done, and all the minds that you've freed, and just all the waves that you've left all around the world. We are with you, and thank you.
Thank you, and definitely, and the music in the background is a shout out to you in our song Light Shines. By the way, much love. Thank you. Free Mumia Abu-Jamal, and prayers of peace and strength.
4437, I see fear is the greatest weapon of them all. What do you see? The earth is polluted in more ways than one. Our self-destruction had begun. 506 since the downward spiral. Industrial rev at 2012 a mile. Human beings confined to the construct of citizenry. Brainwashing values through media manipulations. Y más de esto se perdió. Todo la sagrada y nada quedó. No más profanidad, la balanza se perdió. Y amor no hay, y amor no hay. No más el odio quedó. No más el odio quedó. Así Colombia, Puebla, Panamá. With the elections and the corporate state. U.S.-led Haitian coup d'etat. I see the Six Nations under siege. Desecration of the sacred peace. Profit of a people's South Central bomb. Colonialism for the world indigenous. Killing of Mother Earth. Neoliberalism for the Philippines of Africa. San Salvador, Teco y Oaxaca, cabrones. I see the patriarch and neo-fascism. Down in street rebels and Haditha. Awaken from the dominant dream. Give praise to the ancestors and all living things, even the rats, and take a look through the third eye into the fourth dimension. Obtain comprehension of all that surrounds, of all that surrounds. 'Cause the eagle still soars through the smoggy air. I say eagles still soar through the smoggy air. 'Cause the wind below still blows. The wind below still blows. And the light still shines through. See the earth in demise.
light still shines through.
Hey everybody. First of all, my name is Santiago Alvarez, and I want to say happy birthday, Mumia. We love you. We love you so much. I'm really honored to be here, a part of this program, and I'm really honored to be a part of the movement to free Mumia. I want to give thanks, start off by giving thanks to the elders in the movement who have really carried this movement throughout all of the years, like Pam Africa, Ramona Africa, Olive Move, and all of the generations of Panthers and freedom fighters who have carried on this decades-long struggle to free Mumia and to free all political prisoners. And I want to thank Mumia. I want to thank Mumia for being consistent and persistent in his teachings and his contributions to the youth. He's always uplifted the youth and youth power. And so it's our turn to uplift his power as an elder and give back and contribute to this movement to free Mumia. So yeah, he's always been anti-imperialist, and he's always been on the forefront of shaping the language and the ways that we understand racial capitalism and the prison industrial complex. But he doesn't do it from a way of taking away, but he also contributes his understanding of what the solution is, and what the answer is, and what the truth is. And that's a more humane world. That's abolition. And that's a world that we all deserve to live in. So Mumia Abu-Jamal, Russell Maroon Schultz, Sundiata Acoli, Leonard Peltier, and all of the political prisoners, they're people who give us hope. And they shine their light, they share their knowledge, and they give us the tools to continue the struggle, and the call to collectively pick up the work wherever we are and in whatever ways and capacities we can. So I'm here to really say that my generation has so many strong and brilliant shoulders that we're standing on. And in this age of Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate, it's also important to uplift and call for the freedom of Mumia and all political prisoners too. Mumia really invites us to ask ourselves and each other what abolition means to us on an individual level and on the collective level, and what we can do to fight for this better world. Mumia is currently a graduate student at UC Santa Cruz. And so it's only right that youth, that students, that workers, that people in labor unions really do everything that they can, because 2021 is the year to free all political prisoners. COVID-19 inside of these prisons is a death sentence, and it shouldn't be that. So there's an immediate need to decarcerate, and there's a long-term demand and need to abolish. And this is this is not only for our generation, but this is for the generations to come. This is for the youth, for the future generations of youth. This is for the babies, right? And I'm saying that as someone who was a baby growing up in a community of Mumia supporters. And so in the same way that I'm giving back, it's also a generational responsibility to give back. So I just want to say that, we're so happy that Mumia has had a successful surgery. And we also know that open heart surgery is a very serious procedure, and the road to recovery is one that takes time. And so right now we really have to, like Angela Davis said, accelerate this struggle to free Mumia so that he can heal in the comfort of his home and with his loved ones. So with that, I'm going to end it by saying freedom is the only treatment. Free Mumia Abu-Jamal and free all political prisoners on the move. Thank you.
Welcome to the first Democratic debate in the 2020 race for president.
Time to rise. It's time to rise and reach and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Time to rise. It's time to rise and reach and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Tired and sick of these so-called leaders. Cause problems and blame it on the people. They want to take what they can from you. But when it's time to give back, say screw you. You can fight and give your life for the cause. Call for help, they won't take your call. You can vote and help put them in the office. Die in the war, they ain't laying in the coffin. They don't care about the people. They just want to get a steady paycheck. Oh yes, they could not care less about the country. Drill every mineral out, no less. That's why so many people are outraged. They see through the scam and scheme. And all this money this system funneling don't help poor people rub in the stream. Look at how they attack us at the pipeline, poison our water like they did the coastline. We say no for the sake of our health. They bring cops in armed to bring death, just like they did the Puerto Rican, trying to turn him into a weak man. Stole his land and colonized the natives, just like they did the people of this land. They so hella out of pocket. Anything good you got, they stop it. Any system that work, they block it. Take what's good and give you the rotten. History repeating like picking cotton. Take a number, all the forgotten. The revolution rolling over evil and true to yo. Get yourself a good seat and watch. It's time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. I'm so fed up with these people telling me the problem is all in my mind. That everything is cool, I'm imagining things ain't nothing going wrong, everything is fine. Just because they convince so many idiots to believe in the game they running. If they think they gonna get away with this plan, now check, they got another thing coming. Loud and arrogant intimidation. What we face is extermination. Got no love in them cause they Satan. Donald Trump is a stone cold racist. They hating, they crazy. They ain't never gonna let you lead this nation. Incarcerating, enslaving. Better look elsewhere to find your saving. They don't care about the people, never did. They're trying to make the Indian man all gone. They kill each other and sing about it. The American anthem is a violent war song. World problems are worse today. The face of the earth is cursed today. Tomorrow politicians to give you the same game to vote for them and every one of them will betray. Wilson, Good Street, Nutter and Larry. Donald Trump, Nixon and Barry. Clinton, Bush and Terminator. Same job, political exterminator. We on our own and we got one problem. And there ain't just but one solution. Kick these political parasitical bloodsuckers to the curb and embrace revolution. Time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Yeah. John Africa said move ain't talking about changing governments. Replacing one corrupt dictator and slaver for another. Move is talking about doing away with all forms of external government and replacing it with the government of self. Yeah. Time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. Time to rise. Donald Trump has got to go. Time to rise. Clinton, Bush and Bush got to go. Time to rise. It's time to rise and beat and overthrow. time to rise. These lying politicians got to go. Time to rise. It's time to rise. Impeach and overthrow. Time to rise. These lying politicians got to go.
My name is Roderick Johnson. I'm a death row exoneree from Pennsylvania. Mumia Abu-Jamal was one of my mentors. He helped me, find my way through the law library, shepherdizing cases, learning the law, learning how to study cases and fight for my freedom. I was caught up in a drug organization that was run by the district attorney who tried both my cases. I had 2 death sentences and a life sentence without parole. And the cops who arrested me and investigated my case was also part of the drug organization. So it's very important that we bring attention to what is going on, not only in Pennsylvania, but around the country. Yeah, Mumia Abu-Jamal was an amazing mentor to me. He would always, have people come visit me to talk about my case and bring attention to what was going on to me, involved in the corruption in my cases, fighting for my freedom. I was eventually released on December 1st after spending 24 years in prison. Robert Sugar Bear Law was also an amazing mentor who helped me in so many ways, getting in contact with various organizations to fight for my freedom, as well as Brother Maroon. He helped me in so many ways. I can't even imagine, what they're going through right now and what they've been through over the years. I'm talking about these guys got 25 and 30 years in the system, fighting for their freedom, fighting to prove their innocence, where the evidence was right there, proving their innocence. It's crazy what they have to go through to fight. And I'm just so appreciative to everything that they've done for me. Yeah, I'm here to do anything I can to help Mumia, Brother Maroon, Robert Sugar Bear Law, and anybody else, Jose Boussonnet, and many others, Melvin Ortiz, fighting for their innocence, to prove their innocence, not only in Pennsylvania, but Philadelphia. Larry Krasner used to produce this evidence and show the evidence that he has, exonerating these brothers and let them out. COVID is running rampant through the jails. As soon as somebody is diagnosed with COVID, they put them in medical quarantine. It's crazy. They gave everybody in Pennsylvania jail the Johnson & Johnson vaccination. And as you all know, the Johnson vaccination was recalled. People are getting, blood clots and health issues. And now they talk about today, it's even, people are coming down with herpes from the Johnson & Johnson vaccination. So, anything people can do to help these brothers fight, not only for their life, but for their freedom, needs to be done. These are our loved ones that are fighting for their life in these jails. And the DA has evidence that will exonerate them and release them. This needs to be brought to light. It's crazy how politics come into play, with a mass incarceration. Brothers fighting for their life and politics, and these prosecutors, these district attorneys, want to get reelected. So only thing they're looking for are Nazis on their belt, instead of proving and showing, the evidence that proves that people are innocent in prison. So this needs to be stopped. And, these political prisoners who are fighting for their freedom, they need to be set free. What is going on not only in the United States, but around the world with political prisoners, it needs to come to an end. We need to fight for our brothers. We need to fight for our sisters. I don't know if y'all know, but a lot of females, a lot of sisters are being caught up in this mass incarceration right now. The female prisoners population is growing steadily, daily. We need to fight for these political prisoners. We call them political prisoners because they're caught up in the politics of what's going on in this government. And this needs to stop. It's supposed to be the United States. We need to stand united and not divided. I need to send my apologies. I was released on December 4th from Reading, Pennsylvania. I'm never stepping foot in Pennsylvania again. I'm from Bronx, New York. I'm gonna keep myself here in the Bronx, in New York. But I'm here for all those in Pennsylvania who's fighting. My number, my email. Get at me. Anybody who needs support in New York, in Pennsylvania, contact me. I'm here for you. All the Mumia supporters, I'm here for you here in New York. Get at me. Free Mumia Abu-Jamal. We on the move. Forever, always. One love.
Peace, love, and liberation, everyone. My name is Taina Asili, and I'm so grateful to be here with you all today to honor the life of Mumia Abu-Jamal. Mumia has been such a huge influence in my life, including this song that I'm going to share with you today called Prison Break, which was inspired by letters that I would receive from political prisoners like Mumia Abu-Jamal and the Move 9. Mumia, through his writings, through his teaching, through the letters, has helped me to understand the sickness that is this prison system, to understand systems of oppression, to understand what it means to be in solidarity, to understand what it means to stand up and fight for our freedom even from behind a prison wall. Mumia, may you be free, free today and free for the rest of your life.
Don't you hold me down, no. Don't you see that I am flying? I slip from your grip 'cause I am free. Don't you hold me down, no. Don't you see that I am flying? I slip from your grip 'cause I am free. This war is just a war. These bricks were made to fall. Asada broke through your facade, and so can we, so can we. This world is just a war. These bricks were made to fall. Asada broke through your facade, and so can we, so can we. I said prison break, gotta start to mend these walls. Prison break, the system bring on our soul and body. Prison break, tear self-hatred from our tattoo skin. Prison break, and know that we are worthy. Prison break, 'cause we're all locked up, and the only way to freedom. Prison break is to free ourselves. Prison break, so I inherit the wind I am a sea. Prison break, dance across the other dangerous weed. Don't you hold me down, no. Don't you see that I am flying? I slip from your grip 'cause I am free. I am free. Don't you hold me down, no, no. Don't you see that I am flying? I slip from your grip 'cause I am free. I am free. This war is just a war. These bricks were made to fall. Asada broke through your facade, and so can we, so can we. This world is just a war. These bricks were made to fall. Asada broke through your facade, and so can we, so can we. I said prison break for those who came before to bring us freedom. Prison break, even they started with a vision. Prison break, so today my voice, it is a siren, lashing out with echoes to smash these walls. Don't you hold me down, no. Don't concrete, but I am the flower. You are the jail bars, but I am the dirt. You are the prison walls, but I am the Lord.
The call today is still all power to the people. My name is Ajamu Baraka. I am honored to have the opportunity to express my love and appreciation for Brother Mumia on this very special day. Brother Mumia, I guess you have seen before in the past, but it's always good to know and be reminded of how much love and appreciation we all have for you. We wish that you could be on the other side of the wall, but be assured that your voice has always been a voice of inspiration, of insight, and an enthusiasm for serving the masses of our people and indeed humanity in general. Let us today assure you that we will not rest as long as you and any of our political prisoners and prisoners of war remain behind the walls of this fascist state. We will struggle, we will resist, and indeed we will win. So my brother, thank you for your years of service. Thank you for your clarity. Thank you for being who you are. We will continue to fight. We will continue to struggle. And we, in fact, will be, in the end, victorious because we have you as a model of resistance. So on this day, we say once again, we're with you. We think about you every day. And indeed, we love you. All power to the people.
Hello, Mumia. This is Jonathan Richmond, calling to say, Mumia so admired, because noble is his way. The decades pass and change things, but that voice is here to stay. Noble, noble, noble. All outcomes now uncertain, all forces now in play. The world around us changes, but that voice is here to stay. Noble, noble, noble. Happy birthday, Mumia. From Jonathan.
You brothers of the Angola 3 did an ungodly bit in the hole. How did the state justify locking you cats, up for so long?
Well, given the unchecked and unchallenged power of the prison system in Louisiana, the justification was the fact that myself, Harmon, and Robert were fighting for humanity, the fight that we were fighting for to maintain our dignity, pride, self-respect, and our self-worth. They felt was a threat to what they considered to be the orderly function of the prison. That was the justification. The infamous Warden Burr came, even made a statement once in a deposition that I was the most dangerous man in America. And since I've been out, I would like to think that my activities have proven him to be right.
How did y'all endure 40 years in the hole?
That's the most difficult question to ask. I guess having a political consciousness, that was inspired by being members of the Black Panther Party. They say knowledge is power. So we had a sense of what solitary confinement was designed for. And so over the decades, it was just strength, determination, values, principles. And we stayed active and we looked to a society for inspiration. The men and women, in some cases children, fighting in society to be heard, fighting to change conditions and stuff, rather than turn inward and allow the prison culture to set examples of how we should live our lives.
What gave y'all hope?
The love, I had wonderful family, wonderful comrades who made up the International Coalition to Free the Angola Tree, a wonderful legal team. But more than anything, what gave me hope was the guys I lived around, people in society, the social struggle that was being waged, the sacrifices that was being made, the indomitable spirit that refused to be broken. Those are some of the things that inspired me. One thing in particular was the development of Black Lives Matter movement, which I think is a tremendous movement. And it was so proud to see all the young men and women involved in that movement come forward. As a matter of fact, before the pandemic, when Robert and I were traveling together and speaking, we always asked the host to arrange if possible so that we could meet with some of the young leaders in the movement. So those are the things that gave me hope. It's, a love of humanity, the indomitable spirit of the people, and the continuous struggle that was going on in society. Mayor, my brother, given the preponderance of evidence exonerating you and lack of evidence against you, how does it feel to still be in prison?
Brother Albert, and in the spirit of all the Angola Three, I salute you. I think of early days, even before trial began. It was a pre-trial hearing. I'd read a law book showing cases from the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. So it's based on the Constitution, right? Well, I went to the law library, read those actual cases, and then drew up motions. I made a motion in court. The court promptly denied this motion. I couldn't believe it. But it made me understand that the court that most people meet when they first go into court wasn't bound by a constitution or Supreme Court rulings. They do whatever they want to do because it really ain't about the law. It's about power. That same judge, Judge Sabo, would later say, and I'm saying in open court, 15 years later, in my case, justice is just an emotional feeling. To quote Malcolm X, don't be shocked when I say I was in prison. Long as you south of the Canadian border, you still in prison. So all power to the people.
My brother, what is your most painful personal loss?
My mother and our daughter, Edith and Samita. I had dreams of walking with both of them in freedom. And of course, other family members, brothers, sisters, cousins, brothers-in-law, Basil, Lydia, Jimmy. They live in our memory and in our hearts.
Again, my brother, what is your number one priority when freedom finally comes?
The same as it's always been. To serve the people, to work on their behalf, to work for a world where true black liberation is a reality, not just words. As the Rastas say, freedom is a must. Thank you, Brother Woodfox.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
We are the people! We are the people! Motherfucking people! The motherfucking people! And all we want! And all we want! Is black liberation! Is black liberation! Everywhere we go! Everywhere we go! People wanna know! People wanna know! Who we are!
Marc got that heat.
It's been so cold. It's been so cold. I feel alone. I have a dream. My poor little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. What you know about the struggle? Everything we get from the muscle. I'm tired of going through all this pain. I'm tired of seeing my people in shame, and that shit fucked up. We deserve the better things in life. Y'all ain't treating us right. Y'all ain't treating us right. Y'all glorifying things in the news, saying that loot and all that stuff ain't cool. But we do what y'all do. This is modern day slavery. Them stimulants ain't changing me, ain't saving me. What about them fucking homicides? Them cops leaving us to die. We protesting, trying to get things right. Y'all wanna get things right. Y'all want us to die. Trying to knock us off. Why y'all really trying to knock us off? Trying to knock us off.
And what about the youth? We the next generation, we the truth.
Yeah, we the truth. We trying to get this shit right. Y'all the next generation growing up in life. Man, this shit ain't got to do nothing with black and white. It's about living our life and we live it right. Put our pride to the side and do right in line. Cause that shit that they telling us ain't nothing right. Yeah.
Don't support the phonies. Support the real. You know what I mean? How can these people be talking about how they so real and they don't care about our communities? How can they be talking about what they, all this, you know, the hood, blah, 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 blah. They don't care about our communities. You know what I mean? Listen to the words that people say.
It's been so cold. It's been so cold.
I don't give a damn if they burn down Target. Because Target should be on the streets with us, calling for the justice that our people deserve. Where was AutoZone at the time when Philando Castile was shot in a car, which is what they actually represent?
Trying to find home. Yeah, shit been so cold. Oh.
Peace, 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 family. Hopefully for the past 2 hours, you've been empowered, you've been inspired by what you've heard. First of all, we want to say long live Walter Wallace Jr. and the Walter Wallace Jr. family. As you've heard with that music, he meant so much to our city, and he meant so much to the family and to our community of activists working towards liberation and ultimately abolition. We're looking forward to this day, and one thing I'm reminded of as I hear the messages today from Germany, from France, from the Philippines, from North Philly to North Carolina, I'm reminded of a passage from Mumia's book, Have Black Lives Ever Mattered? And it's in the section called To Protect and Serve Whom? He says, the reason movements emerge. I'll read a short passage before we close today. Mumia writes, when a society reaches a dead end, when it can no longer persist in its old ways, social movements arise to push it to its next stage of development. If that social movement is able to project its ideas and spread them widely enough, and these ideas find room in the hearts and minds of the people, such movements may make the next step and define the era's zeitgeist and what is and is not the common good. We are declaring this weekend and for the past 40 years, the common good. We are declaring the spirit of abolition a common good. We are declaring an assault against police terrorism the common good. We are coming together around the world to free Mumia Abu-Jamal and all political prisoners as the common good that defines the zeitgeist. We've seen today in the spirit of Mumia Abu-Jamal's own writings, the importance of the now and the importance of what we will do to catalyze towards the next generation. We have never been more confident than this moment. We have never been more confident than this moment that our brothers are gonna come home. And with that being said, we wanna make sure that you do a couple of things. One is stay tuned to letmumiaout.com, letmumiaout.com. Stay present, stay vigilant, keep sharing it on Instagram, on your Twitch, on your Facebook, on your Twitter, social media, wherever you can share it. Please continue to share our websites. Secondly, continue to share and read our Jamal Journal. The insight, the inspiration, the ideas, and the news. And lastly, this weekend, as part of our Freedom Weekend, tomorrow we will gather at the north side of City Hall, where, as we say, the RZA statue used to be. Shout out to the organizers. But we will be on the north side of City Hall, unified. We have folks coming from all across the East Coast to be with us together, standing strong and standing long for our people, for Mumia, and for all those locked in cages, including folks such as Immortal Technique, including folks such as M1 of Dead Prez, including folks like Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., and more importantly, the people, the masses of the people, speaking and giving voice and rise to power of this moment of saying, we need Mumia Abu-Jamal, not now, but right now. Mumia Abu-Jamal will be home. And that's tomorrow as we then take to the streets. And then Sunday, we will declare our commitment once again to our brother Russell Maroon Schultz, 8 to 1 p.m. at the Maroon Garden in West Philadelphia, 58th and Spruce Streets. And then from 1 to 4 p.m., we will be at Malcolm X Park, working with the Walter Wallace Jr. family, his father, his sister, his wife, his brother, and many others who have committed themselves to understanding that what happened in October of 2020, when Walter Wallace Jr. was killed by the police, cannot be in vain. We must always look up that story and what it means in the large arc of history when it comes to our struggle, but more importantly, our movement. Again, we're declaring the common good. As Mumia said, we are. And we are defining the zeitgeist of what's yet to come. So when our generation and generations to come look back in the history books, they will say, wow, they were able to divorce themselves from the ills of white supremacy, divorce themselves from the ills of anti-Blackness, divorce themselves from the ills of capitalism, divorce themselves from the ills of imperialism, and work towards humanity at its greatest height. So we thank you all for joining us. We thank you all for being here. We thank you all for the donations. We thank you all for making your comments and remarks in the chat. We thank you all for supporting all of our networks and websites, from letmumiaout.com to mobilization, the number 4, Mumia.com to prisonradio.com. We want to thank all the organizers who helped put tonight together. We thank you for your tireless work and tireless energy to move us forward. So with that being said, family, always remember, the power of the people is more potent than the people in power. Stay strong, on the move, and I believe that we will win. Free Mumia Abu-Jamal.